Ciao and
Ciao.
benvenuto. Welcome to the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books. Today's episode is designed for Bella Italia and Italian fashion. I'm your host, Wendy Kendall. The result of my love of fashion, and especially my passion for purses, mystery, and romance, are the books I've authored in the intriguing In Pursuit mysteries. Cat Out of the Bag introduces Catherine Watson, purse designer sleuth. As Kat moves from designer bags to body bags, she's uncovering clues to a murder. The prequel, Pistachio Makes a Splash, delves into a chilling cold case. Finalist for Best Romantic Suspense at Killer Nashville, Snow Kiss Cookies to Die For creates a tangle of mystery and love. A summer read that will keep you on the edge of your beach towel, Cherry Shakes in the Park blends danger, divas, and frothy delights. And ribbons of love run through Heart of Christmas cookies and dreams. Thank you so much to all the readers who've told me how much they enjoyed my books. After we go in pursuit, please check my website, wendywritesbooks.com. Italian fashion is often referred to as a blend of elegance and diversity. What a coincidence. That's a great description of my guest today. She is author Tessa Floreano. She writes historical mystery tales about Italians. They're set in Italy, in Europe, and in the Pacific Northwest. Eclectic. And her exploits on research forays all over the globe make Tessa Floreano an excellent partner in pursuit of fashion and fiction. In her early years, Tessa spent time with her family in northern Italia. She's spent a portion of each of the last 10 years there, and with the help of her relatives, she's accumulated quite a bit of research. The yearning to blend her love of family stories with her passion for history, mystery, myth, and magic became too strong to ignore. So she started a journey of weaving it all together and writing about it in 2 blogs and websites. Then agents and publishers took a shining to her work. She's a multiple award-winning technical writer, former Microsoft Innovation columnist for Seattle Examiner, and a published poet and novelist. Her most recent novel is titled Slain Over Spumoni. Welcome, Tessa Floreano, in pursuit of fashion and fiction.
Oh, thanks so much, Wendy. It's a great introduction. Happy to be here.
Well, Italy is a global leader in fashion with a long history of craftsmanship, creativity, and elegance. What impresses you most in Italian fashion, and what is unique in it?
Yeah, let's see, I think I'll start actually with a little bit of history and then and context, and then I'll answer what impresses me most. So there's a famous saying that goes, speak English, kiss French or cook French, drive German, and dress Italian. And I think there'd be no argument from many people when I say, Italy's been renowned for high quality craftsmanship, their tailoring, their design, luxury designs, right? Like some of the big luxury labels are Italian. And and this has been true for, I would say, 10 centuries, something like that. And so the export and the manufacture and then export of fashionable items is an integral part of Italy and Italy's economy, and even in terms of the world economy as well. And that includes textiles, accessories, and not just clothes. So it also involves that sector involves a lot of people, a lot of companies, and a lot of revenue generated. And I want to let people know that, it's so important that Italy actually assembled a whole fashion sector a few years ago called Confindustria Moda. And I did a little bit of research on this. I'm just going to share some big figures just to show you how big it is. So the industry itself is 67,000 companies, about 600,000 employees, and about 90 billion euros. Now, those numbers might be adjusted, because of the pandemic and all of that, but it's, just shows how important fashion industry is to the country. So now let me take that a little bel further. Bel Paese, or beautiful country, is a poetical appellative for Italy, referencing its mild weather, its environment, its cultural heritage, its natural endowment. And any visitor to Italy, instantly understands how important beauty is to Italians and always has been. So it makes sense that that sentiment would transfer to design and to fashion. But it's more than just looks. It's like I said earlier, it's the craftsmanship, it's the fabric, it's the details, and ultimately how it makes you feel. And I would say that's certainly true for haute couture, but also anything that is made in Italy in terms of clothes, so not just haute couture, but any clothes. I would say that that's true. And so now for what impresses me, I would say, again, there's another famous expression, but it's in Italian, and I use it in all my book. It's called bella figura. And literally, it means beautiful figure. But figuratively, it's an idiomatic expression that Italians use to express every part of Italian life. So in the literal sense, we might use the term to comment on someone's physicality, but we might also use it to compliment someone on their outfit. But further still, you could say that the comment could be used holistically to reference physicality, wardrobe choice, and comportment. So bella figura is an all-encompassing term. And for me, the aesthetic is a philosophy that underlies everything Italian, and it's so innate to the culture and such a point of pride that if I keep talking about it, I'm going to start to cry.
Oh,
Italian fashion is an extension of bella figura.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Italy is a country which gave birth to some of the most legendary style icons in the world. Among the many, is there a particular designer you'd love to share some insights about with our listeners?
Yeah, there's maybe two or three that I'll share something about, and the kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So and I'm sharing it for two different reasons. So the very first ones that a lot of people might be very familiar with, from the 30s, is Elsa Schiaparelli. And she was so daring. The second one, it would be Marina Rinaldi, which is more contemporary brand. And she was known for, back in the 1880s, starting fashions for curvy women, way back when in 1880s. So go back to Elsa, or Schiap, as she's known. She was what I would call the first of the bolds. So if you think of a bold as in like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Christian Lacroix, Vivienne Westwood, Betsy Johnson, Issey Miyake, she was the first of that, like in the 30s. I mean, she was a contemporary to Coco Chanel, and she was dressing like the Duchess of Windsor. And there's a famous picture of the Duchess of Windsor wearing Elsa's lobster dress. So Elsa was very much in touch with the surrealists. They were in her social circle. And so she created these surrealist designs in her clothes. She also invented the color shocking pink. And
Oh,
yes, and that became not only her perfume, but it became the color of her brand. And she was also the first designer ever to grace the cover of Time. So she was, very, very, well known in her day. So then let's shift now to Marina Rinaldi, who is the name of a great grandmother of the gentleman who started the brand in the 50s. And so this is his great grandmother, the one who started an atelier in Italy for curvy women. And so, she was, I would say, her clothes are like on Rodeo Drive and Madison Avenue. And so the fact that she's elevated, haute couture for curvy women is really remarkable. So there's a really concerted effort in that brand that I appreciate, that, just they're at the forefront of inclusivity from the get-go, regardless of women's age or their shape. So let's see, the second answer to your question is probably something a lot of your audience may not know, and it's a connection to the Pacific Northwest. And I actually mentioned and have a little bit of a brief of this gentleman in my upcoming book, my first nonfiction book, called Italians in the Pacific Northwest, and it features Emilio Pucci. So Emilio Pucci was an aristocrat, but he was impoverished. He went to Reed College, and he did a swap for room and board, and his college tuition in teaching college students to ski for the he helped inaugurate the ski team, and he designed the uniforms. So went on in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s, designing very avant-garde, very wild looking for the time, but still very popular clothing. Vividly printed silk jersey dresses is what he was known for. And so I actually will have an article about him on my Substack, also called Intrepid Italians in the West. So people can look me up on Substack and look for that article. It's coming in about a week. I was hoping to have it today for your audience, but I don't.
Well, that's very exciting. Even more insights. In your delightful book, Slaying Over Spumoni, Violetta, a former nurse in Grado, my accent's not as good as
That's
yours,
all right. It's all right.
in,
Grado, that's correct.
in Grado, Italy, shortly after World War I, Violetta meets a young man at almost the same instant she learns that her favorite uncle is dead. Suspicion of murder arises, and the two work together to prevent Violetta from being accused. They'll have to solve who did it. Will you tell us a little bit about Violetta and also about fashions during that historic time period?
Right. So she was a nurse during World War One. And I won't tell you. So when the book opens, she's no longer a nurse. She's now a massage therapist at a therapeutic at a resort. Grado was known as a healing resort because of the water and the sand. And Grado's famous for burying people up to their neck, and they would rest in the sand for about half an hour. And there's something in the sand, the minerals, etc., as well as the water coming in from the Adriatic Sea, that help heal people, especially those that were affected by mustard gas in the trenches in World War One. But the reason she's no longer a nurse, I'll leave to those who choose to read my book and find out why. But the book opens, she's working at the resort. And yes, her uncle dies by sandbath. And she's, accused. So World War One, especially in Italy, which was heavily bombarded, a lot of women, are still, by the end of World War One, or when the book opens 1920, they're still wearing the fashions from 3 or 4 years earlier. But there is a scene which I think we're going to read a little bit later, I think if we have time, where, I describe the outfit she's wearing and the outfit that her date is wearing. But and she's not much of a fashionista, I have to say, and material's hard to come by, after the war. So before the war, dresses and skirts were they had a train and they pooled to the floor. They were fairly restrictive, and they included the hobble, which is where the skirt was quite narrow and impeded a woman's stride. Then during the war, women adopted shorter dresses. The hems were above the ankles, or even maybe 3 or 4 inches above the ankle. And that allowed them to work outside the home, where many of them hadn't done. There was a lower waistline. There was a looser, less confining silhouette. And petticoats and corsets were gone. But that tubular-like version of a dress that we see flappers wearing, that happened mid to late 20s. So my book starts in 1920, so there's no flapper fashions. But and they could pull them over their head. Hat width was quite large before the war. It decreased and even went like very, right on the skull by the time the flappers came around, because they had bobbed hair and they had the cloche hats. And so lots of changes in fashion in a very short period of time, and that's reflected in my story.
Oh, and it's such a super read. I highly recommend it.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I love the intrigue of mysteries, and I also delight in the surprises that are found in fashion design. How do you think the processes of designing fashion and writing a mystery are similar?
Let's see. Well, the designer is like the writer telling a story, right? The designer uses fit and fabric and color and thread and accoutrement, like buttons and zippers, to create a narrative. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end when they're designing or creating a piece of clothing, much like, a writer is plotting a book. Um, the writer uses words, and the words build character. They set a scene and they add subtext and so on. And some designers say, they include hidden darts. So you're talking about mysteries. So hidden darts or seams, hidden zippers, a hood. They create the garment so it can be reversible. I'll show you a purse later if we have time that's reversible. So even that reversible, that sort of maybe not so much hidden like you were saying, but extends the use of a particular piece of clothing or accessory. So these are all, like, I would say, that are little surprises that add mystery to a garment, like when a writer drops clues, or a mystery writer anyway, drops clues or adds red herring, etc., to craft their mystery. So yeah, I agree with you. There's some similarities there.
Oh, nicely done. Love that. Would you treat our listeners to a reading from your mystery slaying over Spumoni, please?
Okay. Sure. I selected a small part of a scene that where fashion's mentioned. And when you write a story, you really only want to include detail if it really adds something to the scene. So I'm not going to describe every single thing that she wears, but in this one, because she's going on a date, I do. All right. Vi stood in front of her mirror. Vi is short for Violette, I should say. Vi stood in front of her mirror and shimmied into her midnight velvet dress with a chiffon lace bodice and flutter sleeves. Carefully, she tied a satin ribbon into a bow at her waist. It was a tea gown her uncle had made for her for a soldier's ball she'd attended with him to celebrate the armistice. He generously donated some gelato, because he's the gelato king of Italy, and the colonel of the regiment invited them both as his guests to the ball. She added a long rope of pearls and matching teardrop earrings to finish off her outfit. Then she hurried over to her uncle's room. There, in his honor, she spritzed herself with a creation from his favorite barbershop, a masculine scent for a caring, fatherly man, hints of tobacco, powdery leather, and oak moss. So different from Johnny's, this is her date, so different from Johnny's scent. Embarrassed, she set the cologne back atop the highboy chest next to his favorite brand of cinnamon toothpicks. She fingered the box and recalled how he was rarely without one when he wasn't eating. Vi lifted the box lid to grab one, a toothpick, for her handbag, but was surprised to find the box empty. Feeling a trifle weepy, she had a little talking to herself. As she was leaving, she noticed her uncle's checkbook register and decided to have a peek inside. She flipped through the last few days and weeks. Most everything seemed in order until it wasn't. Zio Fabri, Zio is uncle in Italian. Zio Fabri had, his name is Fabrizio, she calls him Fabri. Zio Fabri had written out 20 or so large checks to cash. There were no accompanying notes, and therefore, Vi could neither make head nor tails of the matter. Why did he need so much cash? He didn't normally carry around substantial stashes. Clock chimed and she squealed. She was late for her date. She slipped on her shoes and twirled one last time in front of the mirror, grabbed her handbag, and headed for the door. The neighbors, actually, I'm going to skip this part. As Violetta crossed the Camino, the evening light softened the relics of time and war in the small squares and narrow streets. Worn cobbles, discolored cement walls, and spent shells littered like metal cigarettes on the edges of the corner manse. She ignored the ruins, the rubble, and the remnants of what the fighting had left behind. This was the medieval castrum, the fortified settlement in the historic town center of Grado, which had managed to survive the Great War relatively intact. As she hurried through the maze of Cali, past the remains of 2 of the 6 old city gates, the heady aroma of night-blooming jasmine, gardenia, and peonies seeped into the night air and made her lightheaded. Violetta reached the edge of the laguna and peered down at the ancient landing place that gave the centuries-old village its name. A set of crumbling stairs off the promenade led to a tiny restaurant. Carved out of limestone and igneous rock, this craggy space had been tended by 7 generations. Initially built to service bygone mariners, tourists on the Grand Tour had found it, and now even the locals could barely secure a table. I crossed her fingers and hoped there was room for 2 tonight. She held the railing and stepped slowly down the stairs, soaking in the magic before her. Rambling roses climbed over the restaurant sign. Trailing vines intertwined with flower boxes beneath windowsills. Ivy clung to walls ornamented with wrought iron and glowing lamps. Candlelight and posies of honeysuckle graced each bistro table. At the bottom of the stairs, Johnny leaned against the nearby arch. Suited in a double-breasted navy pinstripe suit and spats on his black wingtips, he was suave and debonair. When he saw her, he straightened and approached the stairs, holding out his hand to help her down. Violetta, he said, and kissed her hand. Johnny, she said simply. His warm lips on her skin sent a shiver through her, not unlike a mild electric shock. She was relieved when the maitre d' mysteriously appeared.
Bravo. Love it. Okay, I know there's also a particular setting, an Italian castle that you're excited to be writing about in your new book. Can you tell our listeners just a little preview about that?
Let's see. Yes, it's set in 1898. It's set in the Veneto. So Veneto is a region of northeastern Italy. It's about an hour west of Venice. And this castle was a fortress from the 9th century onwards. This castle was actually recently bought a few years ago by Italy's version of Mr. Dyson. So if you think of the Dyson vacuum, the guy is from England, but Italy has a version of this kind of inventor. And he was driving by in his Bentley and he saw this fortress and he bought it. Well, I came upon this castle and I saw it's a great place for a mystery to be set. And this story, I don't want to share the title just yet, but it does take place in 1898 at Christmas, and it is about the wedding of Violetta's parents. So that's a little bit about you. You can tell I like my research.
There's definitely a link there between the two books too.
That's a companion book. Yeah.
Yes, your research is super. And let me just also tell our listeners that the research is so skillfully woven into the story that it's just a beautiful read every time. So let me digress just a little bit. Still talking about Italian purse design, but I would like to talk a little about designer handbags made in Italy. They are top-notch in the fashion world. And much as Tessa was saying, this is due to the craftsmanship and the style. Italian handbags were made with leather in the 12th century and beautifully adorned, making them wanted from the very beginning. By the 16th century, places like Florence and Venice were well known for their craftsmanship of the very best bags. Italian bags are not just beautiful, they are perfectly crafted. And the ways of making that have been handed down from generation to generation. So the tradition is extremely sturdy, yet beautiful bags, and that is still alive today. Designs of Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Armani still lead the handbag industry worldwide. But I wanted to take a moment to talk in particular about Prada. The first Prada store opened in 1913 in the prestigious Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II in Milan. Mario Prada opened the leather goods shop with his brother Martino. The store sold bags, trunks, steamers, and travel accessories. In 1919, Prada was awarded the title of official supplier of the Italian royal house. This prestigious distinction allowed Prada to display the House of Savoy coat of arms and knotted rope design in its trademark logo. This honor is what made Prada a symbol of the Italian aristocracy. Mario Prada's daughter, Luisa Prada, took over the family business as Mario's successor and ran it for almost 20 years. In 1977, Muccia Prada met Patrizio Bertelli, a young Italian with his own leather goods business. He joined the Prada family business, and his partnership with Muccia took the history of Prada in a new direction. Her sophisticated creativity and Bertelli's entrepreneurial intuition helped expand the Prada business. In the 1980s, purses became manifestations of a woman's successful career and her own successful life. One of the outstanding designs was in 1988 with Prada's revolutionary backpack purse. Until then, high-priced luxury bags and venerable European leather goods were only for the elite. Prada started to design purses that suddenly crossed the boundaries of wealth and class, and they were a sensation. Prada's first It backpack bag quickly followed. The term It bag was coined in the 1990s with the explosive growth of the handbag market in fashion. Designers competed to produce a single, easily recognizable design, which, if cleverly marketed, endorsed by the fashion press, or seen being carried by a celebrity, would become that season's must-have bag, selling in large numbers. Just to let you know, Prada's stated signature look is the sexy librarian, and that instantly changed the way many women dressed. And the Prada woman is seen as complex, practical, but also luxurious. Prada was ranked as fashion's hottest brand in the world in the fourth quarter of 2022. So just a little bit about one of my favorite designers. Tessa, do you have a favorite purse or handbag that you would carry in Italy in particular?
Um, so having had my purse stolen after a month's worth of research in Italy, I no longer carry nice purses when I travel, including Italy.
Wow.
So it's kind of the wrong question to ask me, but I do have a couple of favorite purses to show you. One of them is a connection to my father. I won't say a whole lot about it because it'll make me kind of weepy, but you can see this is kind of a bucket bag, and this was handmade for me in Florence. It's red. It's suede, like blonde suede inside, so it can be reversible, but I don't reverse it. And you can see it has the little tassels here, and then it has this um, piece that connects through the back to kind of, close the purse. But this is one of my favorites. And in Seattle, I don't use it very often. Also, like I said, because it reminds me of my father, I really want to treasure it and make sure I have it for a very, very long time. So that's one. So it's not a brand, but it's custom made for Florence. The other brand that I another favorite purse I really like, not Italian, but it's a Coach bag that I bought after I got a job that I really wanted. So I treated myself to this purse. I call it my Seattle bag because it has patent leather. And in Seattle, it's so important not to ruin nice leather like that other purse I would never take out in the rain. So I have to be very cautious with that one. This one, I've had it for 8, 9 years, and it wears very, very well. The patent leather, the rain just, flies right off of it. So there's a couple of my favorite purses.
Oh, love it. Love it. Okay, well, besides fashion, we have something else in common, spumoni. In my prequel, Pistachio Makes a Splash, designer Catherine Watson's enjoying delectable frozen pistachio treat at Gennardo's beachside ice cream shop. And then things go crazy from there. So Gennardo's pistachio is actually a critical ingredient of spumoni. So Tessa, why did you pick spumoni for your story, and what is your favorite ice cream?
Well, I'm Italian, so I like gelato, which is different than ice cream. But yeah, spumoni is one of my favorites. And the reason I chose to write about spumoni as the ice cream in my story, or gelato in my story, is a story I read. So it's inspired by a murder that happened that's connected to L&B Spumoni Gardens in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, a few years ago, just before the pandemic started. So L&B Spumoni Gardens started in the 30s, and they introduced Spumoni to the United States. The family that started the L&B Spumoni Gardens. So they're famous for their pizza as well as their Spumoni. Well, somebody had worked for them and begged them for their red sauce that went on the pizza, and the owner refused. The guy came back and killed him.
Oh.
And so I was like, wow, slain over sauce, you know. And so when the opportunity to write this book came along, I thought, I remember that, and it's like so awful that happened. But I thought, how about being slain over spumoni and it involving two brothers, and let me set it in Italy, so it's not in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. So that was kind of the inspiration. One that I love gelato, and that spumoni is my favorite. And then this real life story.
That is so awesome. Tessa, thank you so much for sharing this fashion and fiction fun with us. It's wonderful for everyone to know the research and thought and artistry that goes into the many different ways there are to tell a story. Check out Tessa Floreano at her website, tessafloreano.com. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join me next time for the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books.
Thanks, Wendy.